Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Vocabulary Boost. I'm Clara.
And I'm Leo. We are so excited to kick off this journey with you today.
This podcast series is all about helping you master 1,000 new English words in just 30 days. I know that sounds ambitious, but trust me, with the right techniques and a bit of dedication, it's absolutely achievable.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that anyone can do this, whether you're learning English as a second language or you're a native speaker looking to expand your vocabulary. These strategies work for everyone.
Today's episode focuses on the science of vocabulary acquisition. We'll be diving into how our brains actually learn and retain new words. It's fascinating stuff.
I can't wait to get into it. And throughout this 6-episode series, we'll cover everything from tech tools and memory techniques to contextual learning strategies and ways to maintain your expanded vocabulary for the long term.
But first, Leo, can I just say how happy I am that we're finally launching this podcast? We've been planning this for months.
I know. Remember when we were brainstorming podcast ideas over coffee and you spilled your entire latte all over our notes?
Oh gosh, yes. But I like to think that was the universe's way of telling us to start fresh with this amazing concept. Even coffee catastrophes can lead to beautiful beginnings.
That's our Clara finding the silver lining in a coffee stain. So shall we jump right in?
Let's do it. Our first segment is all about how your brain learns words. This is the foundation of everything we'll be talking about in the series.
Right. So when we learn new vocabulary, what's actually happening in our brains is pretty remarkable. Our brains create neural pathways, essentially connections between neurons that link the new word, its meaning, its sound, and sometimes even images or emotions associated with it.
And the more we encounter and use that word, the stronger those pathways become. It's like creating little word superhighways in your mind.
That's a great way to put it. And there's an important distinction between working memory and long-term memory when it comes to language learning. When you first encounter a new word, it goes into your working memory, which is temporary.
Yes, working memory is like the notepad of your brain. It holds information for a short time while you're using it. But to really learn a word, we need to transfer it to long-term memory, which is more permanent.
Exactly. And this is where many vocabulary learning methods fall short. They don't account for what researchers call the forgetting curve.
The forgetting curve. I remember learning about this in my psychology class. It was proposed by Hermann Ebbinghaus in the late 19th century, and it shows how information is lost over time when there's no attempt to retain it.
That's right. Without regular review, we can forget up to 70% of what we learned within 24 hours. But the good news is we can combat this with spaced repetition, reviewing words at increasing intervals.
I've been using spaced repetition for years, and it's changed my life. I used to try cramming vocabulary the night before tests in college, and guess what? I'd forget everything within days.
I think we've all been there. Another crucial factor in vocabulary retention is context. Our brains remember words much better when we learn them in meaningful contexts rather than as isolated items on a list.
Absolutely. Learning the word surreptitious from a list isn't nearly as effective as encountering it in a sentence like, "The detective made a surreptitious entrance into the building, careful not to alert the security guard."
Now that we understand a bit about how our brains process vocabulary, let's talk about setting realistic goals for our 30-day challenge.
Yes, 1,000 words in 30 days means learning about 33 to 34 words per day, which might sound intimidating at first.
It definitely can be overwhelming if you think of it all at once. That's why breaking it down into manageable chunks is so important.
Exactly. I like to think of it as learning just 8 to 9 words in the morning, 8 to 9 in the afternoon, 8 to 9 in the evening, and then a quick review before bed. Suddenly it seems much more doable, right?
That's a great approach, and personalization is key here. Some people might prefer to learn 50 words on weekend days and fewer on busy weekdays. The important thing is creating a schedule that works for your lifestyle.
And that fits your energy levels too. I'm definitely a morning person, so I do my most intensive vocabulary work before noon. Leo, I know you're more of a night owl, right?
Oh, absolutely. My brain doesn't fully wake up until after lunch, but by 10 p.m., I'm in prime learning mode. It's all about knowing yourself.
Another important consideration is balancing quantity versus quality. It's not just about hitting that 1,000 word goal. We want to actually retain and be able to use these words.
That's such an important point. I'd rather learn 800 words that I can actually use confidently than 1,000 that I'm shaky on.
Exactly. But with the techniques we're sharing in this series, you really can aim for both quantity and quality.
And tracking progress is essential for staying motivated. I recommend keeping a simple spreadsheet or using an app to monitor how many words you've learned.
I love that approach. I actually use a wall calendar and give myself a gold star for each day I hit my vocabulary target. There's something so satisfying about seeing those stars accumulate.
Whatever works for you is perfect. The point is to have some way to visually see your progress, celebrate small wins, and stay accountable.
Now, let's talk about selecting your vocabulary universe, because not all words are created equal when it comes to learning value.
That's right. If you're learning English, focusing on high frequency words should be your priority. Just 2,000 of the most common English words make up about 80% of everyday language.
That's amazing when you think about it. And there are some excellent resources for finding these high frequency words. The academic word list is great for students, while the general service list helps with everyday English.
But your vocabulary goals might also be domain specific. If you're learning English for a medical career, your word list would look quite different than someone learning for business or travel.
Absolutely. I have a friend who's a wine enthusiast, and when he was improving his French, he focused specifically on wine related vocabulary first. It made his learning immediately useful for his passion.
That's a brilliant approach. Speaking of resources, there are some great online tools for finding valuable words to learn first. Websites like wordfrequency.info provide lists based on actual usage data.
And don't forget books like 504, Absolutely Essential Words, or Word Power Made Easy that have curated useful vocabulary lists.
Those are classics for a reason. But I also think creating your own custom word bank is incredibly valuable. I keep a small notebook with me and jot down unfamiliar words I encounter in books, podcasts, or conversations.
I do the same thing, but with my phone. I have a note where I quickly add words I want to learn. It's become second nature now. I was at dinner last night and heard someone describe a painting as garish, which I wasn't familiar with, so I discreetly added it to my list.
That personal connection to the words makes them more meaningful too. You're more likely to remember a word you actually wanted to learn than one from a random list. Let's move on to some powerful memory principles for word retention. We touched on spaced repetition earlier, but it's worth exploring in more detail.
Absolutely. The spacing effect is one of the most robust findings in cognitive psychology. Instead of cramming all your review into one session, spacing it out over time leads to much better long-term retention.
I've experienced this firsthand. When I was learning Spanish, reviewing words at increasing intervals, maybe after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, helped them stick so much better than just reviewing them daily.
And there's also the testing effect, which shows that actively recalling information strengthens memory much more than passively reviewing it.
Right. So rather than just rereading your word list, it's much more effective to test yourself, try to recall the meaning without looking, or try using the word in a sentence.
This active recall is really challenging sometimes, but that's exactly why it works so well. That slight struggle to retrieve the information actually strengthens the neural pathways we talked about earlier.
Another powerful technique is elaborative encoding, basically connecting new words to existing knowledge in multiple meaningful ways.
Yes. So for a word like abscond, which means to leave hurriedly and secretly, you might connect it to a movie scene where someone absconds with stolen jewels, or imagine yourself absconding from a boring meeting, or connect it to similar words like flee or escape.
The more connections you create, the stronger your memory becomes. And multisensory learning approaches can supercharge this process. Try to engage multiple senses when learning new words.
I love this approach. For instance, don't just read the word silently. Say it aloud, write it down, create a gesture that represents its meaning, draw a quick sketch. The more senses involved, the better.
I actually do a little physical movement for some challenging words. For oscillate, I sway back and forth, and for diminish, I make a shrinking motion with my hands. My wife thinks I've lost my mind sometimes, but it works.
That's brilliant. And you know what? I bet your wife will never forget those words either after seeing your performances. Our final segment today is about understanding word relationships, which is crucial for building a rich, interconnected vocabulary.
This is where vocabulary learning gets really interesting. Instead of seeing words as isolated units, we start recognizing the connections between them.
Exactly. Let's start with word families and morphological relationships. Understanding how words are formed can help you learn multiple related words simultaneously.
Take the root dict, which comes from Latin and means to say. Once you know this, words like dictate, predict, verdict, and contradict all share a common thread that makes them easier to remember.
I find this approach so efficient. Instead of learning individual words in isolation, you're learning patterns that apply to dozens or even hundreds of words.
Another important relationship is between synonyms and antonyms. Learning words in these natural pairs or groups helps reinforce their meanings through contrast and similarity.
Yes. And creating semantic networks, webs of related words, can be incredibly powerful. For example, if you're learning the word ecstatic, you might connect it to happy, joyful, elated, and thrilled, while contrasting it with miserable or despondent.
This approach mimics how our brains naturally organize language. We don't store words in alphabetical lists, we store them in interconnected networks of meaning.
Collocations are also super important. These are words that naturally go together in a language. For instance, we say heavy rain, not strong rain, and make a mistake, not do a mistake.
Learning these partnerships is essential for sounding natural. I remember when I was first learning English, I made collocation errors all the time. I once told someone I was carrying out a party instead of throwing a party.
That's actually adorable. But you're right, collocations are crucial for fluency. And finally, understanding etymology, the origins of words, can provide fascinating memory hooks.
Absolutely. For example, knowing that the word salary comes from the Latin word for salt, because Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, creates a memorable story that helps the words stick in your mind.
I love etymology. Did you know the word muscle comes from the Latin word musculuses, meaning little mouse? Apparently, ancient Romans thought that flexed muscles looked like mice moving under the skin.
That's exactly the kind of vivid association that makes vocabulary learning both effective and enjoyable.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. Let's take a moment to summarize the key points from our first episode.
We started by exploring how our brains learn and retain vocabulary, looking at neural pathways, the difference between working and long-term memory, and the infamous forgetting curve.
Then we discussed how to set realistic goals by breaking down that intimidating 1,000-word target into manageable daily chunks and creating a personalized learning schedule.
We also cover the importance of selecting the right words to learn, focusing on high-frequency vocabulary first, and possibly adding domain-specific words based on your particular needs.
We explored powerful memory principles like spaced repetition, active recall, elaborative encoding, and multisensory learning approaches, all scientifically proven to enhance retention.
And finally, we discussed how understanding word relationships through word families, semantic networks, collocations, and etymology can dramatically improve your vocabulary learning efficiency.
I feel like we've built a solid foundation for the rest of the series. Next time, we'll be exploring powerful tech tools and systems for rapid learning, which I'm particularly excited about.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. We'll be diving into spaced repetition systems like Anki and Memrise, digital flashcard strategies, mobile apps for on-the-go learning, and how to create a personalized learning system that works for you.
We'll also cover how AI-powered tools can accelerate your vocabulary acquisition and how to avoid digital overwhelm, because more technology isn't always better.
I can't wait. And remember, everyone learns differently, so as you apply these strategies, pay attention to what works best for you personally.
Exactly. Vocabulary learning isn't one size fits all. Take what resonates from each episode and adapt it to your unique learning style and circumstances.
Thanks so much for joining us for this first episode of Vocabulary Boost. We hope you found it valuable and that you're feeling inspired to begin your 30-day journey to 1,000 new words.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with friends who might benefit from expanding their vocabulary too. And tune in next week for our exploration of tech tools that can supercharge your learning.
Until then, happy word learning.